Yesenia, how are you?
Bien, gracias. English.
English, right? Okay. Yesenia, what is your complete name and where were you born?
My name is Gisenia Lucia Reyes, and I was born in Union City, New Jersey.
What do you remember about your childhood?
Well, we were born in New Jersey. However, we came down to Miami when we were 5 years old, and we've been living here ever since.
What are your parents' name and what were their professions? What did they do?
Well, my mother was Carmen Martinez Asque. She passed away in 2004. And my father is Cuban, and his name is Alfredo Reyes.
Where was your mother from?
My mother was Puerto Rican.
Wow.
Yes.
How was that, mix of cultures between Cuban and Puerto Rican families?
Well, I actually identify with both. I had the pleasure of going to Puerto Rico in December of 2013 and got to meet a lot of my family from my mother's side. Oh. I have yet to visit Cuba. I would love to visit Cuba perhaps this upcoming year and meet my family there.
Right, of course. Do you have siblings?
I do have siblings. I have an identical twin sister.
Wow.
Yes, her name is Lucy. And I have a brother that is 11 years old. He's the highlight of my life.
Yeah.
I love him so much. He makes me so happy.
Why did so many years pass between you and him?
Well, that's my dad's third marriage.
Oh, wow.
He's a product of my dad's third marriage, yes.
How is the relationship with your identical sister?
Well, she is amazing. We've had she's been a huge blessing in my life, to the point that, as we'll discuss later, she saved my life. So if I didn't have her, I don't know what I would do.
So you moved down here to Miami when you were 5 years old.
Yes.
Right? So one of the things that we're going to talk about is you suffer from bipolar disorder.
I used to suffer.
You used to?
Yes. I'm a person of faith, and I declare myself healed. In Jesus' name. Luckily, it took years, but found the right combination of medication. Unfortunately, mental illness runs on my mom's side of the family. And one of the things that I know God is using me for is to become a mental health advocate. There is so much stigma against mental health. And when you say you've been diagnosed with a certain mental health disorder, people automatically have that misconception or misconstrued perspective that mental health is automatically synonymous with someone who's crazy, who can't be stable, can't contribute to the community. And I want to bring light to that situation. I want to show people that you can be productive, that you can inspire people, that you can overcome and be someone that people can look up to regardless of your disability. On the contrary, I believe that I don't have a disability. It's my abilities that make me someone that is worthy of admiration. Not that I want to bring the light to me, but I want to bring the light to who's within me. And that's my faith, and that's Jesus.
Perfect. When you were a kid, did you start feeling something that was not right with your emotions? Did you start feeling something related to bipolar disorder?
Well, for me, I was diagnosed when I was 18. Mm-hmm. It was a few months after high school, and the onset of that was depression. For me, bipolar disorder tends to be more on the depressive side, or used to, like I said. I no longer, thank God, deal with that situation, with those emotions. I've been very stable for a long time. And, well, I was diagnosed, like I said, a few months after high school. So as a child, I had a normal childhood, and I just started experiencing those depression times, that time of depression shortly after graduation, high school graduation.
Because I've heard that some people that have bipolar disorder, it takes years to diagnose. So in your case, it wasn't like that.
No. I was very fortunate to have an excellent team of doctors that were able to study my background and see the symptoms I was exhibiting at that time. And luckily, I was diagnosed right away with the right diagnosis. I know, like you said, it does take a long time for people to get the right diagnosis, and even longer for people to find the right combination of medication to treat that mental health illness. So I was very fortunate. I've been, considering all things involved, I've been very fortunate. Even with the cancer diagnosis later on that we'll discuss, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at 18. and then diagnosed with cancer, leukemia, which is an aggressive type of blood cancer at 33. But again, thanks to my faith, family, supportive friends, and the excellent team of doctors, I'm alive, I'm happy, I'm productive, I'm able to contribute to society and help and inspire others now.
When you, so when you growing up, did you know about this bipolar disorder in your mother's family, or you never found out until later on?
Well, there's mental health, a history, of mental illness on my mother's side of the family. Mm-hmm. My maternal grandmother suffered from epilepsy. Mm-hmm. And through my maternal side, the women in our family had depression and just things of that nature. And
you were aware of that, or you just never even think about it?
No, I wasn't. I never had that conversation with my mom either. That was never an issue. I never got to meet my maternal grandmother. She passed very young at 35.
Right. So it was only when later on you started, when you got diagnosed, that all these things you started finding out in your family that you had? You never knew about that beforehand?
Yes, that I recall, no.
Okay. How do you remember was the first symptoms that you started feeling, around that age or before you were diagnosed? What did you feel? What sense do you have that something is not right?
I was crying a lot. I remember crying a lot. For a lot of my young adult years, I cried a lot. I did a lot of crying behind closed doors. And my personality, and people can attest to this, is I'm a very happy, outgoing girl. But behind closed doors, I did do a lot of crying. If I look back throughout the years.
Do you remember why you were crying? Because of a specific situation, or it was just spontaneous?
No, they were, how I would say, justifiable tears. Mm-hmm. But there's a difference. I realize now, after finding the right medication and whatnot, there are times, and there's sad times, mm-hmm. and you cry. But when you're crying every day, then that's when it's an issue, even if those tears are justified. Unfortunately, I have gone through so many things that would make someone sad. But when you're crying every day, then you know you're not at a healthy place. And that's why I decided to seek attention, medical attention. And again, luckily I was able to...
Was it you, the person who started noticing that I need help, I need medical attention because I'm crying too much, or was somebody in your family? What happened that made you say, this is not right, I have to seek medical attention?
Well, I smile because that first time that people realized there's something going on here was when I had my first nervous breakdown. Mm-hmm. That was the onset that made people realize there's something wrong. We need to identify the problem. I needed to be hospitalized. And that was December of 2001 when I had my first nervous breakdown. And I was hospitalized for 2 weeks.
Did you remember what triggered that nervous breakdown?
Yes.
Can you tell me?
Sure. I think that this interview is giving me the platform to share. This is something we obviously didn't plan, but I'm going to be courageous.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And use this opportunity to say that what triggered that was my first abortion.
Okay.
Yes, that's I was 21, mm-hmm. and that was a very tough time in my life.
Of course.
And I know that in the opportune time, the Lord will prepare me to be alongside of mental health advocate and raising cancer awareness and funds for cancer research, that I will also be able to be a voice for him to tell others and share others about my story with unfortunately having to go through that and now possibly dealing with infertility. And I'm not saying that I'm being punished by God because of the fact that I did that when I was young, and now because of chemotherapy treatment I may not be able to have my own children. But what I am saying is that I know that God has always been with me, and I know that everything happens for a reason. I'm a firm believer in that. I know that His will over my life is perfect, and I know that the Bible teaches us that what the enemy intended for bad, God will turn it around for your good. And if I'm able to help other people through my story, then I will go ahead and do that, be candid, be honest, and share, because so many people are afraid of sharing their story. We all have our skeletons in the closet, how the quote, the saying goes. And the difference perhaps with me is that I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed because it's made me the person that I am today, the person that I want to be for others.
Thank you for sharing
Yes.
that. And I think what you're saying is important. The intention of this is for people to relate to you that may have gone through similar experiences, and for them to know that they're not alone, that you have gone through this, and here you are, and thank you for sharing.
Yes.
So when you were in the hospital because of your first nervous breakdown, how long were you there?
For about 2 weeks. And in that time, I was hearing demonic voices.
Mm-hmm.
I remember they served lunch, and I remember hearing voices that I wasn't worthy of eating with utensils. And I remember feeling like I wasn't good enough, pretty enough, that I had to even sit on the floor, that I wasn't worthy of a chair or a bed. It's a really cruel, cruel illness. And for someone to see me on the outside when I'm doing good and feeling great and being myself, and then when they learn of things like that, they are taken aback, because if I didn't share this, you would never know it. And
You heard these voices?
Yes.
How did it come to you? Was it a feeling? How did you just heard it in your mind, those voices?
Right, it wasn't audible. It was more...
something telling you that you felt, that you heard.
Yes.
Okay. And when those 2 weeks passed, how do they say, okay, you're now good enough to go out into the world? How do they discharge you from the hospital? What has to happen?
Well, I call them horse tranquilizers. They gave me a lot of medication injections to be able to stabilize me.
Uh-huh.
And I recall going through my history, my medical history, going through the reports, I remember specifically reading the patient is deteriorating quickly. And within 2 days, I was discharged. And I remember that transition. And again, being a person of faith, I believe that was because of the prayers that I had, the support of family and friends, an excellent team of doctors that were able to assess the situation and see, okay, what's going on, what's wrong. So in that time that I'm there, they're giving me heavy medication, and it's just a matter of time before I start recuperating. But I believe that in that particular instance, it was a miracle of God that within 2 days I was discharged. When just reading the chart, you would see that the doctor's comment was, she's deteriorating quickly. And I believe that's been a testament of my life as well. If I go back in my life and see everything that's gone on, yes, someone can say, wow, she's deteriorated. But on the contrary, I come back fighting, and fighting with a smile, and with more echándole ganas, no?
Right.
So, yeah.
And your faith is very important to you now. I know that because we'll talk, out of camera. At that time, when you were in the hospital and you were still a teenager, I think?
I was 21.
21 already. Was faith a big part of your life at that point in your life, or not necessarily yet?
I've always had a relationship with God. I would say my way.
Mm-hmm.
I had God in my life. I've always had a love for God. I was raised Catholic. I now attend a Christian church. It's where I identify mostly now as an adult. And I always had God in my life. Mm-hmm. I was instilled those values when I was a child. But I would say that my relationship changed with the Lord when I started going to the Way Church of Miami. That's my home church. And I was able to start a real relationship with the Lord. starting to learn his word and get into the Bible and see and read what is his promises for me. And going to Bible study, going to church on Sundays allowed me to realize that he doesn't promise us good times all the time. Bad things will happen. But we have to trust in his sovereignty and trust that God's will is perfect. And it hurts a lot of us to be humble sometimes, that even we may not understand, but it's not our job or our duty to understand. Our job and our duty is to trust.
But you remember praying when you were in the hospital, or you don't remember doing that? You did? Yeah? Okay. So what happened?
I remember fasting in the hospital.
In the hospital? Wow.
Yes, and that's a biblical principle, but I even remember fasting in the hospital.
Wow.
I remember fasting and praying for those that were there in the hospital. And I remember praying and fasting, as crazy as it may sound, for the world even.
Wow.
I know that we've been in delicate times for a long time, and you hear in church the end times this and the end times that. And as the years go by, you see more and more disaster and you see that the world is not a happy place to be in. There's so much destruction, terrorism, and I just remember and recall praying for the world and fasting. In my mind, I thought that by me doing that, the world would be a better place. And in some instance, I have to believe that on the faith side, but it's actually a little sad that once I am able to return back to quote unquote myself, and I'm able to get out of a mental health episode and realize that I'm back in the same spot I started in. It's kind of a sad realization, but I have to again trust that God is doing a mighty work in me and in others. Even if I may not ever see that fruit, I know that one day when I do see him face to face, that he'll be able to show me my life and say, daughter, job well done, and explain to me why the things that I have gone through have happened. And not that he owes me that explanation, but I would like to know that. And I think that he would honor our desires, and that he would show me. I know that prayer is powerful, and I know our prayers reach him, and I would love to, just out of curiosity, see that perhaps what my intentions were, even if it was inside the mental hospital, if that moved his heart to do something. I don't know. I
understand. And so tell me, when you were discharged from the hospital, you came back into the real world. Was it hard knowing that what you went through, going into normal everyday experiences? How was that period in your life?
I remember initially it was definitely hard to even get dressed and put on high heels. I felt like I almost had to learn how to walk again and be myself. I don't know how to articulate it so that you can understand.
Why did you feel that?
I felt I was just a different person. Mm-hmm. It took me a while to get back into my groove of things, my own rhythm, and be able to be myself again. Mm-hmm. But it took me quite a while to be able to come to a place that I knew, okay, this is me, and be able to be myself, really.
Do you remember what medication you were taking?
I know a couple of medications, but I don't recall at that time what it was. But I've had the whole rainbow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All kinds of colors of different medications. And
what are some common side effects that those medications provoke in you?
Well, the one side effect that was the scariest, I want to say that perhaps that was at my first nervous breakdown. Maybe the second. I've had 6, unfortunately. There was one, I believe it's called tardive dyskinesia. And my hands were at a permanent standstill like this. So much so that I thought that I was going to stay like that for the rest of my life. And that's sad. That's, I've been able to heal from that through therapy and being able to reach out to my support system.
Right.
But that was the most
Your
the
body
saddest.
just paralyzes in that position?
Yes.
Wow.
And luckily that went away within 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow.
But I thought I was going to stay like that. I couldn't control my movement. One of the side effects is uncontrollable movement.
Wow.
And that was pretty sad. And I also had a lot of saliva. It would produce a lot of saliva. When I was in high school, I was part of the TV production class. And my goal was to be a news reporter, an entertainment news reporter. And also, I love the arts. My sister and I love the arts and do acting, perhaps singing, dancing. We wanted to do it all. But as I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I had to put that dream away. And unfortunately, I've never gone after it because, like I said, I've had 6 nervous breakdowns. But I've had to use all that negative and turn it into something positive with what I could and with what I have now.
So after you went through your first nervous breakdown, I guess emotionally you were unstable for many years after that?
No, actually, every case is different. Every case has its severe. It could be mild to severe. And I've been very fortunate that my case has always been a very mild case. If I didn't share it with people, no one would know that I had bipolar disorder. No one would know. My personality is the same day in, day out. What distinguishes me that I'm able, or the doctors are able to identify, okay, yes, this is your diagnosis, is that I did suffer from depression on a daily basis. And then if I had an outside trigger, that will cause me to have a mental health breakdown, a nervous breakdown, an episode, what they call it. And that is why I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, because I enter into episode mode where I crash and burn and have, a mental breakdown and do a lot of crying. And then I'll go on a high and be excited and hyper and the life of the party. And so, yeah.
What would you say are, I'm not going to ask you to tell me each episode that you had after that, but what do you say are the biggest triggers that cause that? Emotional states, bad news, people, getting sick. What do you think causes those episodes?
I think I've been a person that has loved passionately. And so losing people in my life for different reasons, and whether it be friendships or even a love relationship, or losing my mother, I know obviously affected me a lot. And just changes. I don't deal well with changes. Through the years, I've been able to be able to handle that, dominate that, and learn. I heard a pastor once say that change is not our enemy. Staying in the same place is. And so I took that and applied it to my life, and feel that I've been able to deal with change better as the years have gone by.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you say that you are now cured from bipolar disorder?
Yes.
You don't take medication?
I do take medication.
Okay.
But what I do say that I'm cured and healed is because of the fact that the Word of God says that we are healed. We are healed by His stripes. And so I do take medication, but I consider myself healed. I declare myself healed. I don't walk around saying I'm sick, or I have cancer, or I have bipolar disorder, because I'm not those things. I don't identify myself with those things. I identify myself as a child of God. And so I do take medication, but I see that He's healed me through that. So that, yes.
And you will have to take that medication for the rest of your life?
Yes. And that took some time, actually. That took some time. That was a hard pill to swallow. It took some time for me to realize that I needed to be on medication. And it was a sad time. I remember having that conversation with one of my doctors, and it was difficult for me to accept the fact that I had to be on medication for the rest of my life, especially being someone of faith. I'm like, Lord, how could this be? If I am healed, if I am your child, why would you create me to be dependent on a medication to be quote unquote normal? But I know now that it's always for His glory, and that's coming to play, I think, at this stage in my life now.
The medication, what does it help you with? To lower your emotional state so they don't get so high? What does the medication do to your body? Can you explain that?
I believe that what it does is just stabilizes my emotions. I tend to be more on the sensitive side, and like I said, I did suffer from depression. I believe that's its major purpose, is to just stabilize my emotions. To explain it to you where perhaps you can understand it better, if you're happy, you're here at this level. If you're sad, someone passes away in your family or friends, then you get depressed, naturally understandable. You get depressed. But for us, or for those that are diagnosed with bipolar disorder, somebody passes away, we go way down. We stay there for 2-3 weeks or longer. And when we're happy, we're not here. We're elated. We're in ecstasy. So that's where you see the ranges of emotions that differ from a quote unquote, again, normal person to someone who's been diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
People that have bipolar disorder, they just, I don't know, do they always go into that range from top to bottom, or there's people who are more into the upper side, or there's people who are more into the lower side?
Both. There's different. Everybody's a different case. So some suffer from mania and perhaps stay there for weeks or whatnot. Others suffer from depression. Others are in the far extremes, like I said, or in the middle, and some just jump, from either within one day or from days. Some days are great, other days they're not. For me, I've been very stable. It's just depression, unfortunately.
So it's important that people that have bipolar disorder understand that, as you say, sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow, to understand that you're going to have to take this medication for the rest of their lives. Because I've been reading also people, there's a point in their life that they feel better. I don't want to take it anymore.
Right.
No, exactly. It's important they understand that, right?
It's important they understand that, and it's important they understand that and know that it's okay. It's okay. Everyone has something. And the most important thing is that you seek help and that you understand that sometimes things like that happen and you need to take medication and be on medication. But that doesn't make you any less of a person, and it's just something you have to deal with. You have no other choice.
Of course. Okay, so in 2014, you were diagnosed with leukemia. Was it 2014?
October 2015.
15, I'm sorry.
Yes.
How did that come about? How did you find out?
One night, in the middle of the night, I woke up with excruciating knee pain. And I just thought to myself, what is this? I had never felt such a strong pain before. And I remember just soothing myself with my hands and putting my hands on my legs, and felt 3 bumps on my right calf and 2 on my left. And I turned on the light, saw them, and I thought that perhaps I had some mosquito bite or an allergic reaction to something. I took a painkiller, went back to bed, it went away, and about 2 nights later it came back. At that point I decided to go to my doctor. She drew blood, and within 2 weeks she drew blood again, and my white blood cell count had dropped significantly, where she called me one day and said, Yesenia, I don't mean to scare you, but you need to go to the hospital right away, and don't let them let you go home. There's something wrong and it's outside my scope of work already. But they need to run tests and see what's going on in your system. So I did go to my local hospital and they ran all kinds of tests. Everything was negative. However, there was abnormalities with my blood. And so at that point, they said that the next best step was to do a bone marrow biopsy. And that was performed, and within 2 days later, I was diagnosed with leukemia. I received a phone call one afternoon, one evening, and the doctor said...
What is exactly leukemia? Can you explain to me?
Leukemia is a blood disorder. It was an aggressive blood disorder. So they told me that if I did not get treatment right away, I could have passed within a month.
Wow. And so what is the immediate thing that they have you do?
So I went in straight to chemotherapy treatment. It's called an induction phase. Mm-hmm. And for a week straight, I received chemotherapy. And for the following 3 weeks, I was under surveillance to make sure that I didn't have an adverse reaction to the chemotherapy treatment, that I was stable. So for that first initial phase of treatment, I was in the hospital for 30 days. Subsequent to that, I have spent over 100 days collectively in the hospital receiving chemotherapy treatment.
I've never seen chemotherapy being performed. Can you explain to me how is it?
It's actually, I would describe it more almost like a transfusion. There's different types of chemotherapy treatments. I remember one being intravenous. I received it through the IV, but it's almost like a blood transfusion, really, if I could explain.
So you're just sitting there and it's like a transfusion?
It's like yes.
Do you feel anything while it's being done? No, you don't feel anything at that moment?
No, on the contrary, there's a video that I had posted, my sister posted, that she titled it Faith Like Yesenia. And in that video, you see me dancing with the chemotherapy pole, with the chemo hanging from the pole.
Wow.
And
how long are you there as the chemotherapy?
Well, I was there for a month, that first initial treatment. After that, it was a week at a time until the stem cell transplant that I had to undergo, and that was June 30th of last year, 2016.
What are the side effects of the chemotherapy? What starts happening in your body?
Well, I was, again, fortunate. I didn't do a lot of throwing up. I didn't feel weak. There was days that I did feel that way, but most of the time I felt great for the most part. One of the side effects that I felt like was the toughest for me to handle was losing my hair. As vain as it may sound, as a woman, you want to look and feel attractive. And for me, my hair was important. And I understand I'm very fortunate to be alive, and that's more important than hair. But it's also important to feel good. And losing my hair at the beginning, when I had it shaved, I was ecstatic. I remember feeling liberated and happy. But once I got home and I was here and the makeup came off and the wig came off, I remember just avoiding the mirrors in my house, and it was a very sad and difficult time for me, but I'm not ashamed of it anymore. I wear long hair now because it's how I feel most like myself, but there are some days that I don't wear it, and I can show it to you now. Would you like to see?
Yes, I would love to see it. I would love to see it.
Ta-da!
Wow.
I'll leave it off.
Yeah, you look beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
When you found out about the leukemia?
I don't have any hair standing out like a falfa,
no,
right?
You look very good.
Thank you.
By the way, you have hair, so you could use it like that if you wanted to.
Yeah, it's growing out. It's, you know, some days I feel like Halle Berry and I'll rock it.
I know.
Other days, thank you. Other days, I feel sad about it. I feel in some days that my identity was stripped from me in some way, and that now this is the new me, and I'm just getting accustomed to the new me and finessing that new part of me, and being able to work with what I got.
So let me ask you, when you found out about the leukemia, it didn't trigger your bipolar disorder?
No, that's an excellent question. I actually thought that I was, because of the fact that emotional stress causes me to have a nervous breakdown. I thought that would will come about, but I am so lucky and fortunate and blessed is the word to that didn't happen. And I think it's again a testament of all the prayers from families and friends and the medication as well. I believe that I was very fortunate to find the right medication just in time. And just when I was starting to feel normal, that just a couple months later is when I was diagnosed with cancer. So I was like, God, really? I was just coming up for air, and now it's like, go through this now.
What does a person feel when you're told that you have leukemia, that you have cancer? How do you feel? What do you feel?
I remember vividly receiving that phone call and having that conversation with the doctor. My dad was present, and my sister and my stepmother. And I'm a very sensitive person, but when he said those words to me, my initial reaction, I believe, was just shock. But my follow-up question to his statement was, okay, so what do we do now? What's the next step? That was it. I didn't cry. When I went for treatment, for my initial treatment, I was almost excited. I guess that's the way my body was processing it. But it was the time after, when I got home from the hospital for the first time, that I remember, crying myself to sleep at night, worrying perhaps in a way, just not knowing if I was going to die. It was a sad moment. I do say, though, that cancer has allowed me to live the life I've always dreamed of.
Why?
I guess that when you live with a sense of urgency, that you're able to seize each day and each opportunity that comes your way. I've always loved people and pride myself in that a lot of my friendships are from elementary, middle school, people that I've come to have deep relationships with. But I think with this diagnosis, it just allows me to appreciate it even more. But my life hasn't been easy. With the little bit that I've shared, I still haven't covered ground on the details of every hospitalization when it came to the bipolar disorder, and the details of going through chemotherapy treatment and seeing the physical changes. I also gained 20 pounds due to the steroids in the chemo and lost my hair. I had a severe eye irritation for 2 days. I couldn't open my eyes for about 2 days. And just screaming to the top of my lungs one night, like I couldn't handle it anymore. I didn't understand why I had been chosen to overcome. Now I've overcome, but to deal with so much pain in my life. Losing my mom to cancer, a rare kind of cancer, at 22. Being diagnosed with bipolar disorder at 18. Then being diagnosed with cancer at 33. And possibly now infertile, which I'm not declaring that. I rebuke that in Jesus' name. We're taught in church to rebuke those things that have not come to pass, and we trust that they won't. We declare in faith are the promises that God has for us. So if I may not be able to have my own children naturally, I can still carry a child. So I have that to look forward to. I pray one day. And sorry.
Thank you for sharing.
I laugh and I cry at the same time. I'm just warning you. I just know I have to trust that God has a bigger and better plan for me. One of the nervous breakdowns, I think it's important to mention, I got lost. I got lost for a day. I was missing for a day, and that just shows you how cruel bipolar disorder and mental illness can be. And
how did you get lost? You didn't know where you were?
No. In my mind, I knew where I was, But I was found by a police officer. It was 2:00 in the middle of the night. He found me and took me straight to the local mental health hospital. We're here in Miami, so it was here in Miami, and he found me in the middle of the night. And he saw I was dressed. I had gone to work earlier that day. I was dressed well and had my jewelry, my purse. There was a man I remember following me, trying to get me to go to a hotel with him, and I was just like, leave me alone, leave me alone. He was drunk, and the reason why I'm laughing is because it was I do remember, once I'm able to come back to my normal state of mind, I'm able to remember things that happened during that episode mode, but some details are lost on me. But I remember him being just very funny, but persistent at the same time, that he wanted to take me to the hotel. So I just remember telling him, leave me alone, leave me alone. And he was so persistent. I'm like, fine, I'm walking home. If you want to follow me, follow me. But he kept on bugging me, so I just sat down. I remember sitting down on the sidewalk and him just telling me, come, just dance one song with me, just dance one song with me. So here we are, two crazy people, and we started dancing salsa in the middle of 8th Street. It was 8th Street where I had ended up walking at 2:00 in the morning. It's funny, but it's sad. It really is.
Right. It's because you're a positive person, that you can see all these things that happen in your life in a positive light, and that's why it's the first time I've seen you sad or emotional since I met you, and we don't know each other that much, but you're always very upbeat and very happy, and I think it's because of your faith, and because your positive thinking, that you're able to overcome those things, But sometimes for positive people, when they are by themselves, it is when they feel, I don't know, sometimes we are positive and we try to have a positive attitude with people and with circumstances, but sometimes when we're on our own is when we truly, I guess, let go of that positivism and we feel more with our emotions, Is that what happens to you sometimes when you're alone? That you feel more, I don't know?
When I'm alone, I just am able to cry freely. When I'm in front of people, I feel like out of nervousness, like I did earlier, like I cry, but I laugh at the same time. But I'm definitely not afraid of showing my emotions. On the contrary, I am one that if I'm going through something, I will talk to anybody and everybody about what I'm going through. But that helps me. It helps me to be able to I don't know what's desahogarme,
right.
To be able to share with others. But in turn, it's something so beautiful that others are able to share with me. And it lets them know that they're not on their own. And if I'm able to share these things, like I mentioned with the abortion, that's not something fun to share. It's not. It's something serious. And it's something painful to remember. But I know that if God has healed me through that, I want to be able to heal others through my story and sharing my story and my testimony, and be able to let people know that it's okay, but you have to turn it around and make something good out of it. Not continue to live in guilt, not hide and not be able to be a light for others. If you're going through something, it's for a reason. There's a friend of mine that says, your pain is not in vain. If God has allowed it, it's for a reason.
You showed me a mark that you have here. What is it from?
Sure. This is my battle wounds, like I like to call it. It's actually quite interesting. If you see it, it's almost in the shape of a heart. You have to look at it to kind of see the shape of it, but
yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
What is it?
That's where the port was. That's where I received my chemotherapy.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you told me that you had a surgery last year, stem cell.
Yeah.
Surgery.
It's a stem cell transplant. Is what it is. And so I went into remission when I received my first dose of chemotherapy treatment. However, there was still negative mutation in my blood work that was showing up that could cause me to relapse, meaning that the cancer could come back. And so the doctors decided that it was best that I receive a stem cell transplant. And at that time, at that moment, it was now decided, okay, I need a donor. So they did some research and it was decided upon many doctors. I got treated at Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center, and the elite doctors there, the elite team of doctors there decided that I would go ahead and move forward with the stem cell transplant. And they tested my sister. It's kind of interesting, just because we're identical twins didn't mean that she was my perfect match, but she ended up being my perfect match and saved my life. My identical twin sister saved my life.
Wow, that's very nice.
And you see how beautiful that is, that God would create us for me to have an opportunity to continue living my life.
Of course, that's very nice.
Yeah.
How do you see the future? What do you want out of that?
I see it bright and sunny. No, I see it as an opportunity to live out the life I always dreamed of. I believe I've gone through the trenches. I hope that the bad is already in the past. I pray that nothing else comes my way, really. But if it does, I'm ready to conquer it. But I pray now that this time that I have left is used for me to be able to inspire others, to teach others that with God all things are possible. And we all have setbacks in our lives. We all have a story to share. We all have a story of loss, of grief, of not feeling enough, of broken relationships, of maybe addiction, of falling short, perhaps of vices, for money, for women, for men, sex, all that. We all deal with something. We all deal with something. But I believe what sets us apart is what we do with that. Do we become a victim or do we become a victor?
I like that.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing your story, Gisy.
Thank you.